child stars where we're like, send in your headshot of the car, you pay us to
Yeah.
have the car in our movie, and here you go.
We promise we won't exploit this car by having it have sex with somebody.
Definitely not.
This movie doesn't have a tagline, so we're all horny for cars. Welcome to I Hope You Suffer.
That would have been a great tagline.
I agree. Yeah, I assume Katie not so horny for cars, so we will see.
You assume correctly.
This is episode 294 of I Hope You Suffer. I think we're recording out of order. Who knows? Numbers don't mean
Yeah,
anything.
It doesn't matter.
I'm Nathan.
I'm Kit.
I'm Katie. I don't know.
And
We haven't done real names in a long time.
I
Well,
know.
I had to think about it. I'm like, what is my name?
we are joined by extra car horny freak Lori Alex from Queer Horror Cult.
That is my title on my business card.
We are going to be talking about 2021's Titane, which is how I pronounce it, and I don't know if that's correct or not. I'm sticking with it.
I think
Titane?
Titane.
Well,
Titane.
that's all. We all have
I don't
different
know.
ones.
If I don't get it right, they kick me out of Canada. So
Yeah, you tread lightly here.
I have to go with the most American version of how something would be pronounced because
Titany.
mostly
Titan.
Ohio was where I was at, so you
Fair.
know. Yeah, we're gonna talk about a real banger that three of us have seen and Katie has not, so don't expect I don't know. The entire time I was rewatching it, I was like, I can't tell if Katie's going to be into this or just gonna be like, I am very upset. So we'll find out right now. Katie, what did you think?
Why don't you take a vote?
My vote is you liked some of it and were upset by some of it. I feel
Yeah,
like you
I'm
were
gonna
probably
say-
like, it's fine.
I'm gonna say you disliked 70% and liked 30%.
I'm gonna say you disliked the first 20 minutes.
I'm going
Fair.
to say that we talked for about 2 hours total in our lives, so I can't weigh in.
based
fair.
based
I
on
will say-
the fucking what was the movie we did last?
That's what I was trying to remember what
Final
it was
Flash.
called.
Yeah, Final
Yeah.
Flesh.
So there seems to be like a trend
I
here.
was
with,
shocked that Katie liked Final Flesh for the most part, so maybe I'm wrong and maybe this worked.
You're all wrong. I did not like any of this.
Unbelievable. It's so good.
I will say, like, I visually liked, of course, like the lighting in the movie. There's a lot of really, really cool shots. But for me, I have no idea, could not understand what was going on, but like, not in a good way, in my opinion. So I can very obviously see how people like this movie and how it would be. This is like one of those movies where I watch it and I'm like, it's very obvious that Nathan is very into this movie. And I'm like, why do you keep making me watch these things?
Like, I think it's really interesting because like the first time I watched it, like I honestly like I think when it first came out, I was like, I don't know, I'll get to it eventually. And it was literally like one of the reasons I invited Lori on, it was listening to the Queer Horror Cult episode on it that I was like, all right, I'm gonna check this out like immediately. And like I do think, which like if you haven't seen it, I think it's a movie that like should be seen with maybe as little like knowledge about what it is as possible.
Yeah, don't Google it.
Like, but like I don't know. I reached a point where I stopped being that person and I don't really care that much if something is spoiled. So like it didn't really make a difference to me. I still was like, this is a masterpiece. And like I loved Raw, so I was like, I knew I was gonna watch it eventually. But that Queer Horror Cult episode, I was like, all right, This sounds extremely up my alley. I'm in. And I think it's like a really interesting, like, sort of bait and switch of what sort of like the intro to this episode. I feel like everyone was like, oh, it's the movie where like someone fucks a car. But it's really this like sort of like meditation on like family or like chosen family or like whatever, and like stuff like that going on for like a good portion of it that I don't know how much people pick up on because they're just too busy being into the more like body horror aspects of the movie. I'm wondering, like, I know like Kit and I have talked about it, and like I don't know, I guess on like a rewatch, Lori and Kit, like what are your guys' like takeaways before we kind of go into the plot more?
Lori, go ahead.
Oh, okay. Yeah, I think you kind of nailed it on the head with what I took away from this. The last couple times I've watched it is really the found family aspect of it. Like, this is one of those movies that I also went to it hearing it's like, oh, it's the one where the lady fucks the car, and it's like, okay, this is gonna rule. And then I saw that, and it pulls that switch, about a third of the way into it, and I find it a really tender movie after that point. Like, it almost makes me teary at points with how much it's a movie about unconditional love and found family and all that. So I think what you said at the start is like bang on.
Yeah, I really feel that like by the time you get to like Alexia like accepting or sort of like I don't know if accepting is necessarily the right word, but starts, I guess, like caring for this guy that is her now fake dad. Like it gets, yeah, like same way where I'm just kind of like, especially once you get to the end and you get to like the, Alexia like giving birth to like whatever the fuck this baby is.
Car baby.
Yeah. And he's just like, I'm here, or like whatever. And then he does it with like the baby. It's like the same way where I'm like, I kind of tear up a little bit in this movie. It's like someone's skin is splitting and they're like made of steel under their skin and they got impregnated by a car and is like fucking leaking motor oil out of their nipples and shit.
Basically, as I talk to my friends about it, it's like, hey, you want to come over and watch Gay Tetsuo?
Yeah. Have you ever wanted to see Tetsuo and Crash at the same time?
I think it's like, so sorry, I don't mean to interrupt Kit's like thoughts, but I think it's like so interesting that you two are both saying that this is about like a found family situation, because like obviously whoever's watching the movie, their experiences are going to reflect, like have some kind of like say on like how they receive the movie. I found their relationship extremely toxic.
Oh, like I'm not saying it necessarily is like a great relationship, but I feel like, again, like you said, it's like kind of your personal experiences,
right,
like thrown into it. Because I remember like the first time I was watching it, like I didn't pick up on it. I think this is the third or fourth time I've watched it. And maybe the first two times I was just like, the first time I watched it, I was just kind of like trying to take in what all was happening. And then the second time was that one where I'm like, all right, I know the plot. I could kind of just like soak in it for now. And then the last two times I became more intrigued by the like second half of the movie than I was by the first half, which is more of the like these two sort of like fucked up broken people like accepting each other as like a new family based on like just this weird happenstance of coincidences that led them together. And like, I don't know, I find that aspect to it a lot more interesting. Like I have the same sort of feelings with like Raw, where I feel like I care less about the sort of cannibalism like aspects to it than I do just like the character development shit in it. Anyway, Kit.
This has all made me realize that this is basically a Fast and Furious movie because it's about cars and family. Yeah.
Dom Toretto pulls in the fire truck at the end.
Yeah. He's the one delivering the baby. Now I'm also always surprised at how kind of heartwarming this movie is every time I watch it. It's like there's the scene where he finds out that she's been pretending to be his son, and he's like, well, I don't give a fuck, like, who you are. Like, you'll always be my son. That part always kind of gets me.
Yeah, there's like a heartwarming delusion in the dad that like I always am kind of like taken aback by when I watch it. And like, yeah, I don't know. It's just it's so good. Katie's wrong. Don't listen to Katie.
I do it. There are toxic angles to it.
And,
a word I'd use is probably more messy than anything. Like, it's a messy relationship. But I like that it is like a bad dynamic, but born out of like a shared humanity that just, I don't know, makes it work for me.
Yeah, same. Katie, did you take like any notes at all on it, or?
I did, but I don't know that they'll be very helpful. It was essentially.
Well, I had texted Katie and I was like, look, like for the most part, there's not like a super detailed plot per se. So like, don't really worry about notes unless you want to take like a general plot outline. But I was like, I would rather you like watch it, especially because it's like in French, than like have to do pause start shit to like take notes. It's not like
let the motor oil wash over you.
Yeah, we're not watching like Virus Shark where if you miss shit, it's not a big deal.
Yeah, I guess like
what if the Virus Shark fucked a car?
I mean, hear me out. Crash, but with sharks.
Yeah.
Where I grew up, there was this house that one of the places I grew up, there was this house that had a shark built into the roof of it, like to look like it went head first through the roof of the house.
That rocks.
And it's just like that's just like Shark meets Titane meets Amityville movie all together. House about a shark house.
I would like. I don't know if I ever buy a house now. I know what I'm doing. But I'm gonna have it busting out of the house.
I mean, houses are so expensive. Like a shark add-on can't be that much more, right?
That's true. I'll start getting a quote for how to turn my house into Sharknado, and we'll see.
Just like sharks at every fucking like at least into one wall each. Yeah. But you have to have one of them popping out with Joker makeup on, pointing at like the one neighbor's house.
That's fair. I think they'll appreciate it.
Yeah, so I guess what are your notes? We'll just talk about it generally. We don't need to do like a plot. I was just curious what you took notes on.
Well, I'll just give you
Macarena lady.
Yeah.
I'll just get like I wrote like I like the lighting shots. This was specifically talking about the movie starts with the main character being essentially, is it Alexia?
Yeah.
Okay. Being an annoying child in the car, which, children are wont to do, which results in a car accident, which results in a, head injury where she has to get, a surgery. And so I guess my question is, I think that I just couldn't infer enough behind the scenes information about what was going on, because there's not a lot of, this is one of those movies where there's not a ton of dialogue. It's just long shots of things happening to this main character, which I don't necessarily mind. It just, for me, again, this was my very first viewing, so I think that I just maybe had a hard time keeping up with what was going on, because it's so as a child she has this surgery and then comes out and is obviously infatuated with the car, and
that immediately bypasses her parents to go hug and kiss this car.
kiss a car. So I'm already confused. So then essentially she is like a go-go dancer type situation at like car shows, which is great if you're in love with cars. Like, why not, right?
So this is the only aspect of the movie that confuses me, is I can't tell if this is supposed to be a very, like, a general car show, or if this is a very specific, like, a stripper type thing.
I mean, I think I have never been to a car show, but I've seen this situation in other media that, like, I feel like it's a thing.
I'm gonna start going to car shows because I need to find out what's going on at car shows, apparently.
I will admit that my reference is like CSI and things like that, so
Right.
it could very well be a made up thing, but I have seen
Reliable.
it. Right, I have seen it on enough things that, like, I don't know anything about cars or car shows.
I feel
So,
like you could show up at a car show and you'd just be like, put your hands on your hips, being like, "Well, this is way less horny than I expected."
Like, how come
it
no one is
probably,
fucking any
actually.
cars here?
Yeah. I will say that, again, not a car person, but the car that had, like, the flames all over it, very cool. Like, I could definitely see the appeal
Guy
to
Fieri.
that.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I'd fuck that car.
Yeah, so dancer at the car show leaves, and specifically the shot that I really liked was, like, I think the thing that this movie did well for me, regardless of whether I liked it or not, was, like, there's really good tension building. Like, the entire time you're extremely nervous, which is fine, right? It's like that's like the thing. But there's a shot whenever she's leaving the car show where there's, like, a quote unquote fan following her, and there's, like, this long shot down a tunnel and then, like, a far up shot in the parking lot, and the way that the lighting and, like, the whatever lens was used to, like, shoot this movie, like, I really liked. Like, I liked the way all the colors were and the framing of the shots were good, even if,
Like,
whatever
the
was
plot didn't
happening.
work for you.
Yes. So visually, yeah.
I think, like you said, like, the tension building is one of the aspects that I really appreciate in this, because there's two different, like, aspects to that, where, like, the first 20 or 30 minutes or whatever is, like, this tension building of, like, her as a serial killer.
Okay, so that's
Which
my question.
Then turns into the tension of, like, oh, what's going to happen when, like, she's found out, like,
Yeah,
or whatever, like, you know, towards the second half of the movie.
I will say, obviously, the only thing that I knew about this movie was, like, the car sex thing, because you had said, hey, like, I watched this movie and this is what happened. That is, like, very much the back burner of the things that are happening. Like, everything is happening and she's just, like, slowly becoming more and more pregnant the whole time, and, like, kind of doesn't really, like, acknowledge it that much until, like, really she can't not acknowledge it, because
she does, but it doesn't feel like a major plot thing until the last kind of little bit of the movie. It's just sort of this thing happening in the background while she's not talking to this guy that she's faking being the son of.
Right. So
what a great plot.
It's so good.
The fan follows her out, and of course she's, like, freaked out because it's nighttime and there's, like, a man following her, which obviously is, like, terrifying. Catches
He's
up
real
to
weird.
her. Yeah. Okay.
I mean, that goes without saying, but
I mean, look,
up to her.
number one, he's going to car shows. Weird enough.
Yeah,
already
strange.
A red flag.
Okay, also going to enough like, he's very obviously obsessed with her, right? Going to enough car shows that, like, he is going to the car show to see her, like, he's a fan of her dancing, I guess. And so, like, he's like, oh, sorry, like, I just wanted an autograph, like, I waited 3 hours to see you or whatever. So she's just like, okay, let me just, like, placate this man, like, here's my signature, whatever. And he's like, oh, what, can I get a kiss? And I was like, fuck right off. Like, already fuck off from the beginning. But okay, so then I will say, obviously, I liked the gore in the movie. It was all really crazy. Like, it was good, obviously. But, like, okay, so he is like, oh, I'm in love with you, whatever. And so she's just like, okay, like, how am I going to get out of the
Yeah,
situation?
he like asks for a kiss, and she does the sort of like hello, goodbye, sort
Like
of the
greeting.
greeting
Yeah.
kiss, and then like he forces himself on her to where she kind of plays into it as she reaches into her hair to pull out this like whatever metal needle she has in her hair, and then stabs him in the ear, which seems not great.
No. So my question is, like, I understand. I mean, I don't. I, so, like, obviously he's murdered. We don't ever see anything that happens with, like, getting rid of the bodies or whatever. There's like there's like a news story about how people are just like showing up murdered, right, in the background. And you get the sense that, like, or maybe I misread this, but I got the sense that maybe like her dad kind of knew that maybe it was her. Do you think?
I could be wrong. I don't think so. I think they just based on like how shitty he is to her as a kid in the beginning when they have the car accident. I just think they don't have a relationship pretty much.
Yeah. Well, either way,
like Lori May, I don't know what your reading is on that.
I think he's suspicious,
really,
perhaps because of when like a lot of those shots of him giving her these like weird side eye when the news report's going on and all that stuff. But I don't think there's any kind of, oh yeah, she's doing this kind of thing. Yeah.
Right. So that's kind of like where I picked up that. And then later, so essentially she's just like, I could see this one murder, right? This like man is essentially like stalking and assaulting her. She kills him. And I'm like, okay, that's fine. More power to you. But then she just like kills this like whole house full of people. And I guess I don't understand, like, why is she killing people? Is it the brain injury?
I don't necessarily think it's like explained. I think it's just a thing that's happening.
I think there's one reason that comes to my mind for it, and it's because of who she picks to kill. It's anytime she has any encounter that resembles any form of a relationship, whether it is or not, and she can't connect with these people, and so she just fucking kills them instead.
Yeah,
like,
okay.
That would make sense based on like her reaction to the dad later in the movie when like there's like a point or two where she kind of like seems like she's going to kill him before she like doesn't and like helps him with something. So like I guess that would make sense. Like she sort of seems like she's gonna have that reaction a couple times with the dad, especially like you have when he's like passed out like next to the bathtub. And she like drops the needle like in the bathtub, like, you know, as the scene where she's like, it seems like she's gonna stab him in the ear, and then she like drops it in and like takes care of him.
You know what? I guess like this is why I was like interested to talk about it, because I was like, I absolutely have no idea what's going on. It makes a lot of sense that Lori said that, because it is like anytime she's also like physically having contact with somebody, like she makes out with that dude to like basically distract him to like kill him, and then the first person that he kills or she kills in that like house or whatever,
is the one
she was like making out with also. So that makes a lot of sense, like why the car like sex is a part of it, because it's like it's not a human, right?
Yeah, it's
like
very cold and mechanical.
Yeah, okay, that makes sense.
Go ahead.
So just on the first person she kills in that house, did anyone else pick up on the fact that was the main character from Raw?
Yeah.
I haven't seen Raw, unsurprisingly, but
Raw
it looks
rules.
quite different. But yeah, I double featured them in the lead up to this.
I gotta say, when they're at that weird dock or whatever, like fooling around, and she's like biting on her nipple ring thing, that seems so shitty.
I have such a hard time watching that moment.
I feel like, I was gonna say
that makes me go, oh no.
That almost gets me more than the upcoming sort of
the chair.
No, the needle abortion attempt.
Oh, okay. I'm not gonna lie to you. I fast forwarded through that. I could not. I was like, so like, okay. I was gonna say
that's probably like the harshest thing in the movie.
Yeah,
because it's all like sound effect. And like her reacting, which is like she like her reaction for it is so good, and it feels very real. And like I feel like
Yeah.
it's that, and then like the when she breaks her nose later, that are like the two real like upsetting parts.
So like essentially she like kills that first person. Then of course there's like a bunch of other people in the house, which I did find kind of funny, that like the guy comes down and
She
is like,
keeps being
hey,
like,
what's going on?
how many people are here?
So she basically just has to like keep killing people so there's no like witness or
Witnesses.
whatever. But the dude that she kills, she literally like
Puts a chair leg in his mouth.
puts a chair leg in his mouth and then like sits on it, and I was like, this is vile. It was so gross.
It rocks.
It was not obviously not even the worst part, but at that point for me it kind of was, and I was like, okay, well, at least visually this is like a very well done gore like situation. And then after the murder house thing happens, when she's like coming home, there's like that scene where her dad like looks out the window and they just like make eye contact, and that's why. And then she literally like sets their house on fire and locks them inside the house, and I was like, that's why I think.
Yeah, I guess like actually talking about it, because it's like outside of just watching it, I guess it makes sense that maybe the dad would be kind of onto her, the fact that she like burns them alive.
Yeah, and that's why I think like obviously being able to talk about it is different than me just like watching it and being like, no, I hated this, because everybody's watching it with a different viewpoint. And so like at this point in the movie, I am watching it as kind of like a true crime situation, which like to me, obviously that's one of the genres of the movie, even though I wouldn't say if you want to watch a true crime movie, watch this. But it's like she's just like randomly the serial killer and then has to go on the run and then impersonates somebody that's like obviously, you know.
Yeah, like, and
part of it.
So
but...
like in the sort of background of all of this is her like realizing she's pregnant, but I don't know if she like realizes it's from the car per se, except like I feel like, you know, when she realizes she's got motor oil leaking out of her seems suspect. But like that's what leads to like she's at the house of the people she like right before she's gonna kill all of them, and uses one of her needles to like try to give herself like an abortion, which doesn't work. She kills all these people and then goes on the run, and she goes to like a bus station, I guess. I'm not sure like what. Yeah, I'm guessing a bus station, and sees like a news report with her face, like a drawing of her on it, because one of the people in this house did escape, which leads her to trying to take up the identity of this little boy that's been missing since he was 10 years old, which is like a pretty interesting scene that, like, the first time I watched it, I was like, I can't tell if this is going to be like offensive towards like sort of trans stuff or if it works. And then I feel like everybody I know has been like, no, this rocks. Like it.
Yeah, as the token trans guest, I can say 100% this fucking rocks.
Like I definitely feel like it's the first like non-documentary I've seen that has like binding in it, which was interesting, and especially like how that kind of plays into a lot of the body horror shit later in the movie. And I don't know, like it works for me, but I was like, the first time I watched it, I was like, oh, I can't tell if this is going to be like problematic or not with people reviewing it, but it doesn't seem so. And especially we got token trans person on here saying it's fine. So.
Yeah, and I'll use this moment to say, if you're going to bind, do not use ace bandages.
Yeah.
Dear God,
Yeah.
do not.
Yeah, no. Even like the sound effects of her like wrapping it around her body, I could like feel what that would feel. You know what I mean? Like, oh no.
I think that's one of the unsung aspects of this movie is the sound design.
Mm-hmm.
Because like they do a really good job of like, especially when it comes to making stuff unsettling in it. Like in general, even just like those needles, the sound they make clanging on stuff or like whatever is like just upsetting to me. And then like you said, like, yeah, just like the sound of like that like tape, like the ace bandage tape pulling apart just made, like, I don't know. It's the sound design in this, like, really works for me. Anyway, back to your notes.
Let's see.
Oh, yeah, I guess we could talk about the scene of her changing her identity by
slamming her face into a sink.
That sucks, but the punching, the leading up to it, I feel like sucks so much. Like the trying to punch your own face, which I don't know if that's possible. Like, I feel like you would constantly have that, like, in your head thing of, like, I can't do this as hard as I want to or need to.
And, like, not to say this is true of all people who suffer, like, a head trauma, but I think that, like, a lot of it for me goes back to, like, that situation with her, because, like, they have her, like, makeup done in a way that, like, she can't hide the scars. She doesn't want to, right? And she ends up, like, they're, like, prominent in her. So I think just, like, her, like, willingness to want to, like, leave the situation that's happening with her,
sure,
and, like, try and, like, fit in someplace, I guess. Like, she's got a lot of issues, but I don't think the harm, I don't know. I feel like after the thing with her trying to use the needle, like, punching her nose to me seems like a cakewalk. The nose thing actually didn't bother me, really. It was the needle thing, and once I realized what she was doing, like I said, I had to skip past it. So, like, obviously major trigger warnings for that kind of thing.
That's definitely the more upsetting part, but I feel like the sound of, like, skull hitting that, like, porcelain.
Yeah, I don't like that.
Yeah, oh god, I can't even imagine trying to break my own nose. Like,
and I think that the head trauma stuff is super important to this movie and kind of why the turn happens. Because, like, right off the start, there's the part where the mother asks, like, when she's a kid and hits her head in the car accident, mother asks, is there any chance of the plate moving? And the doctor says, no, not unless there's any severe or violent head trauma. And then during the scene when she's murdering everyone, she gets her head just racked into the wall to the point that it's bleeding.
True.
And that's sort of a turning point into the rest of the movie, as well as her smashing her face into the sink.
Interesting. I don't think I ever picked up on that. Like, I can remember both of those scenes, but I don't think I ever connected them. Like, interesting.
It was rewatching it for this that I picked up on that.
I'm going to have to rewatch this again this week. I'm on, like, a sort of, I guess, a body horror thing. I got, like, Existence, that Vinegar Syndrome release playing in the background, and Caitlin and I were kind of discussing body horror movies. Also, I don't know if Kit and Katie remember when we were doing Ticks, and I asked Caitlin their favorite bug movie, and they just said, oh, you know that movie with, like, the goopy people in it? And, like,
yeah.
I was like, I don't know what the fuck you're talking about.
Did you find out what that was?
Yeah, Color Out of Space.
What?
I was like,
Where's
yeah,
the bug?
I don't know. I was like,
the monster.
I mean, I guess, yes.
The monster at the end had, like, 8 legs.
Well, I was like, I guess there's goopy people in this, but I was like, that's not at all how I would explain this movie.
Yeah. I was gonna say, well, the goop is legitimate, but bug movie, I'm not sure.
Yeah, I don't know why that came to mind for bug movie, but that's what it was.
You know what? Fair.
Alpacas, bugs, very similar.
They're the same thing.
Yeah,
yeah.
Same family.
Alpacas are essentially in the insect world.
Yeah. I mean, yeah. Okay. So yeah. All right. Okay, so I did my note was that, like, the transformation into Adrian, I don't think that she looked like Adrian at all, in my opinion. But I love
feel like
how
that is, like, a part of it, though, which makes the dad's storyline.
Yeah, because he's immediately like, oh yeah, that's definitely my son.
Yeah, he decided before the blinds go up that that's his son, basically.
Definitely. Yeah. And, like, yeah, I mean, his experience is something that, like, most people cannot imagine and don't want to. So I don't know how long the son was missing for.
I mean, I gotta feel like it's been at least 15 years, give or take.
Right, because they
Because
did like an age progression for like the missing photo poster that she saw or whatever.
like in my mind, if Alexia's got to at least be in like I feel like at least early to mid 20s.
They say on a news report 32.
Oh, really? So it's been like
Yeah.
yeah, so like a lot longer then.
Okay.
If the kid's
Okay.
been missing
Yeah.
since he was like 10.
Yeah. And it is really interesting too because like again, I can't help but come from like a true crime like angle on it that if the dad has been just like open-endedly hoping that this would happen, right? That they would like definitively either way find the son. This person shows up and is like, "Hey, I'm Adrian." And like you said, already decided, I don't care, like this is gonna be my son. That's what's been missing from my life or whatever. And then it like kind of takes a turn from like her being a serial killer, like that doesn't really matter anymore because now she's Adrian, and you're dealing with like situations of there's like there's like a scene where is it supposed to be Adrian's like actual mom that comes to visit? I like miss.
Yes, it's the
Okay. And she very obviously knows that this person is not their son, right? And is kind of just like playing along because obviously she knows that her ex-husband is having a hard time and is kind of just like, whatever. He's like, you're not gonna take my son. She's like, yeah, I don't want him. But he says something to her like, he hasn't talked since he came back. He doesn't talk, but I looked it up and it's totally normal. So it's just like interesting because now you're dealing with like he's like dealing with Adrian as if it is his son and he has all these traumas. So the trauma scope of the movie, if you will, kind of changes towards the main character, which I thought was interesting.
I really like that scene when like the mom walks in and like 100% now realizes it's not her son and like has that moment of like, look, I don't know what your game is. I don't know what like scenarios led you here, but like take care of him. Like or like whatever. And like I don't know. I feel like that's like one of the most heartbreaking parts of the movie for me is her like essentially she's having to like deal with this constant like never being able to like have closure from her son going missing. And probably this is not this scenario specifically, but like they've probably had multiple times of somebody like finding a kid and like getting that hope up and like, you know, realizing it's not their son. And the fact that she's having to do that while also like still like at least caring for her ex-husband enough to like to just be like, hey, like I know I don't know who you are, but like whatever's going on here, like don't hurt him, take care of him, blah blah blah, like whatever. I don't know. I find that part like heartbreaking. It's like more for her than like anyone else.
I think that's pretty on the like bang on with that because one thing that always comes, or it actually doesn't always come to mind, it came to mind this last time, is how much hope is left for either of the parents. Because there's this little scene in there when they're doing the firefighter drill, and the dad, Vincent, sees this burned child hiding in the cupboard holding this toy robot, and his son's room is adorned with robots everywhere. And so it's like, how is this symbolic of him realizing my son is dead, but I refuse to accept it? Is it like flashback as he's like repressed this memory? It's hard to say exactly how literal that moment's supposed to be, but I think he knows that the son's never coming back.
Yeah, it really feels like this is his like he knows like probably the entire time that this isn't his son, but this is his last chance of having his son back. So he's just like, fuck it, this is my son now. And like I don't like his storyline is like really interesting with like the testosterone shots he's taking because he also can't handle aging, and especially what feels like in like a line of work where aging is a problem as a fireman, and like constantly like, you know, he's like the head of this firehouse, but he's surrounded by like peak, you know, like 20 something, maybe early 30-year-old firemen.
Yeah.
And like, I don't know, like I really find his storyline interesting from like all of the aspects of just being like someone aging and also now dealing with like, you know, what he is accepting as his son being back and trying to have like that relationship that has now probably fractured the relationship with like the one fireman that feels like they're saying is like was like a sort of replacement for his son.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So like, I don't know. I find a lot of that like really intriguing.
I really love the comment on masculinity going on through this movie as well, with the testosterone, like him being man enough, with like needing to use steroids basically to almost present himself as this hyper masculine figure. Like we see him right after the first time he shoots up, he's trying to do those pull-ups, like even though he's all like muscly and roided out, he's just like not able to do them, and he starts like raging over it, and his response is to sort of start punching the walls in the mat he keeps falling onto.
Yeah.
And that I think it's interesting that we've got this hyper masculine character trying to raise a woman going under the guise of her as his son. It's, I don't know, just there's a lot there that I'm still trying to unpack about it.
Yeah, like it definitely is like a movie that, like I said, like this was my probably fourth time watching it, and there's still like you talked about earlier, like the connection between like the head trauma stuff where I'm just like, oh, I never even like picked up on that. And it feels like a movie that like every time I've watched it, like more things and like themes or like whatever are just like reveal themselves in it that like I really appreciate.
I think so. I didn't realize that he was taking testosterone. I missed that for some reason. I thought he was
steroids.
doing
I forget, but it's something that's like supposed to be like helping him like stay in shape essentially.
Right, but I don't know why I thought it was insulin. So the testosterone actually makes
whole different movie.
Okay,
Yeah,
okay.
Yeah.
Do you type 2 diabetes? No, like, do you see why it was confusing to me now? The testosterone thing actually makes so much more sense in the context of why I thought their relationship seemed toxic. Like, literally, that makes so much. I don't know why I just assumed he was like.
I mean, yeah, like
doing insulin.
Like, I don't know if they specifically. I can't remember if they actually say what it is he's taking, but like it's the.
I don't think they do.
Yeah, like the fact that he's immediately tries to start doing like pull-ups and like all that shit, and like is like what is supposed to be like the takeaway for it being like one of those two things.
It's just the implication that him being it's an older man and that he's, you know, injecting it immediately after workouts. You're just supposed to assume like it's testosterone or HGH or something to help him kind of be more manly in his declining years, essentially.
Right. I don't know how I missed that. It makes a lot of more sense because like one of the things that comes to mind.
It's nutrient-rich platelet injections.
That's right. Is the scene where like he's very obviously frustrated that like now I'm thinking too, like obviously I picked up on the brain injury thing, but I did not see where she got her head hit and then she pretty much like doesn't talk after that, so that makes a lot of sense. But there's like a scene where he's like very obviously upset that she's not talking to him or responding to him or whatever, and he like puts on some music and he starts like dancing and then is like trying to dance with her, but then starts like hitting her and like punching, like hitting her face and stuff. And I was like, why is this happening? But like, it makes a lot more sense.
I always take that scene as sort of like a take on a male bonding sort of thing. But also like it's I also think he's trying to get a reaction to like hopefully get them to talk or whatever. Or maybe it's like a thing that like maybe not so much like the slapping, but like a sort of like, you know, father son, like especially when they're like really young, like they'll like wrestle or fucking whatever, like goof about shit.
Goof about. Let's have ourselves a goof
Movie's
about.
Movie's all about goof abouts.
Yeah, I mean, actually, definitely. Okay, so some of this actually makes a little bit more sense.
Should have watched it like 4 or 5 times like we did.
I guess my bad. I guess I should have.
I should have told you just spend 8 hours watching this movie today.
just in the chair with the things holding your eyes open.
Yeah, Clockwork Orange style.
I'll have to do that next time. The other scene that comes to mind is the scene where she's like in the bedroom going through like the mother's things and like puts on that dress, and he like comes in and sees her and then is just like starts like crying and showing her pictures of like Adrian as like a child wearing that same like sundress or whatever, and he was like essentially, I don't know, just started crying and stuff, and I was like, oh, he's like, you know, he's like, I accept you, like, well, the scene is different from when he says like, I don't care who you are, like you're my son or whatever, obviously, but interesting.
Yeah, it's like I like, again, a lot of the sort of like gender stuff that plays into this is like really interesting, because it's not like outside of the, you know, the obvious like her now living as this like boy character, like I feel like there's a lot of like subtle things that happen after that just sort of like play with like gender stuff that it's just like, I don't know, just interesting. Like that, like all that stuff with like the sundress, like their relationship is fucking gets real baffling towards like the end of the movie.
Yeah.
That like the first time I watched it, I was like, I don't know what the fuck is happening right now.
Well, to me, so let's fast forward a little bit, because
essentially there's like a good 30 minutes or so that's just like the dad and her like essentially bonding sort of, and like shit with like this fucking dude at the firehouse that's like, I know you're not Adrian, go home or whatever.
I love that fucking scene
in the
when
fire
all
truck?
the firefighters are just dancing they're on MDMA or something, and then like with the pink lighting, and that guy's just like, get the fuck out of here.
I just love that like apparently they just like the minute the dad, this like the fire chief is like out of the room, they're like, rave time.
Yeah, let's have a mosh pit, circle pit right here.
I was so confused because it was like literally like a 10-minute just like dance scene, and I was like, huh? What is happening here? But then there's that scene where they like put like Adrian right up on the fire truck. Like, I don't know what they were expecting, but since like she's got experience as like a dancer, she starts dancing all sexy, and like the dad comes in and is just like, I'm not dealing with this shit.
Yeah, she's essentially starts doing like her dance from like the car show on top of the fire truck, and I think it's the moment, at least for me, that like the dad fully acknowledges that it's not Adrian, but like, because there's a moment at like the very end before she's like, he helps her like give birth, that like it feels like he's going to leave the room, and it's just like, I can't deal with this, you're not my son. But then like when she's like, you know, actively in pain and like giving birth, and like he's like, no, like whatever the fuck's going on, like I accept you, blah blah blah, like I'm here, like we'll get through this. And like I feel like the it feels like the point for me like is that dance when he's just like, I know for sure this is not Adrian.
Right, because isn't that like after that when he like walks in on her in the bathroom and that's when he's like, I don't care who you are, like you're my son, you'll always be my son, like we'll take care of each other or whatever. And like immediately like can see that it's because she was like taking a bath or something like that, can see that it's not Adrian.
I think
Go
so.
ahead.
I think there's that scene where he accepts her, and then I think one of the almost immediate scenes is that sort of mosh pit dance. Scenes.
Okay,
Can we
so
talk about real quick going back to like the mom walking in on her and like how no one is at all concerned that she's got black goo leaking
that
out of
she's
like all of her
obviously
orifices and
ill.
like like no one, like everyone's just like, hey, this sucks, but I don't
Oh
know.
well.
Like,
Well, the body horror has to be symbolic, right? Because like the how big the
Yeah.
pregnant belly is, and then with the ace bandages, you see just like this tiny skinny twink walking around with all.
I was gonna say like obviously the delusion runs a little deep, right? To think that this is actually Adrian, but then I'm also like, how is nobody noticing that she is very pregnant? Like, but like in a way that is does not look at natural at all. Like whenever you see her like naked or whatever, and the at this point like pretty much welts from using the ace bandage or whatever. She looks extremely unwell. And everyone is just kind of like, well,
well, like
it is what it
the
is.
mom straight
Which,
up walks in on her naked on the ground, like in pain, has got like motor oil leaking out of her nipples and vagina, and it's just like she's just like sits down and she's like, hey, I don't know what led you here, but like take care of him. I gotta go. And it's just like, okay.
she's like, you know what? I do not have to deal with this. Peace out.
That was her moment of being.
That scene is what really makes me think that like a lot of the pregnancy stuff, like we're seeing how Alexia feels about it as opposed to any kind of literal truth of what's happening.
Oh,
Because like
interesting.
as soon as you look at it literally, it makes no sense because
Yeah.
you're absolutely right. Like why wouldn't you say anything when there's motor oil pouring out of her or like again like binding and then you would not get that like that much compression with a binder
Oh no.
and then throw on like that size small firefighter's uniform. It's like, yeah, you can't even notice.
Yeah, I do also feel like maybe I'm like stretching a little bit, but the scene that you're talking about with the mom, I do sort of feel like it is also kind of like a commentary on um like people who like normally deal like there's like a stereotype of people dealing with like sons versus daughters or whatever where you're like extremely like nurturing and you like hold the hand like a boy mom so to speak, like you know that's a meme but it is like definitely a thing, whereas with the girls it's just kind of like, well, even though you look very crazy and obviously are in a lot of pain and need help, it's like, suck it up, you can deal with it, like we're not like essentially kind of just like leaving her to her own devices to like just deal with it herself versus I mean
That's really interesting.
the mom I mean obviously I don't know, maybe I though like the more we're talking about this movie the more I do definitely feel like it is staged in a way that like you can take from it like there's like very obviously a lot of stuff going on here and you can take from it things that really it's like your experience to take out of it. Do you know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
I'm having a hard time articulating it, but that's kind of like what I got from
I
that.
think a lot of it is left vague enough.
Yeah.
And like
yeah.
there's enough sort of like themes going on that like, yeah, like there's a lot of stuff in it that is very much up to the person watching it. Like I don't know how to pronounce the director's last name. I'll go to token French Canadian Laurie. Yeah. Like I feel like she's does a good job of like especially this and Raw of just kind of like letting stuff happen and just being like, you know, you figure it out. Like without having to like beat people over the head with like
I respect her for that so much because like just off the few shorts I've made, I know my biggest weakness or flaw as a filmmaker is trying to explain everything, over explain everything, like worried that my audience isn't going to get it. And it's like I have so much respect for someone just like, fuck you, I'm making a movie, get on board or don't, I don't care.
Yeah, like I feel like especially a lot of this movie is like a vibe. Like where like you either are like connecting with it or you're not. And like that's some of my favorite, like most of my favorite type of movies are like that, where I'm like, I don't know, I don't need to know specifically, I don't need a detailed explanation of what's going on. I'm just here to see what's happening.
Yeah. I feel like obviously it says something too, that it's like one of those movies where you like, I went into this episode being like, I don't know what happened at all. What are you guys talking about? But like through the process of like talking about it, I'm kind of like realizing like, oh, that's how you're seeing it, and this is how like I interpreted the scene. So like it's making more sense about like what the commentary is essentially, which is really crazy because it's like, yeah, like if you take the actual like things that happen in the movie, it seems really crazy that anybody's having like a philosophical discussion about it. But like, but to your point, I think that is what actually makes it like,
I think it's
not a piece of trash.
I think it's the type of movie that like, because it's a movie that like, as I was trying to pick like good movies to cover for like what we're doing right now, like I was like, I don't know, this isn't like, there's like horror aspects to it, but it's not like a straight up horror movie. So I wasn't sure if I really wanted to pick it, but I was like, fuck it, like we'll do it. And it's the type of movie that I like, you are either on its wavelength or you're not, and I feel like there's not much of an in between, because like if you're taking this from a literal standpoint of watching the movie where everything is like 100% literal happening in it, like it's not gonna make sense, and it probably isn't gonna work for you. And I feel like the handful of people that I've seen on, say, like Instagram or whatever, that like were like, this is trash, are people who were like only watching like Slumber Party Massacre and Friday the 13th and like just
Cowards.
Sort of like generic sort of like slasher movies, and like don't
no plot
and like
movie
don't
kind of,
necessarily like, you know, which is fine, like if that's what you like, that's what you like, but like, you know, like I feel like if you can't sort of get out of your head of like, this is all literally happening, like a lot of what this movie's about is like not gonna work for you.
Yeah. I think that this movie for me like would have worked a lot better if I was reading it as a book. Like I think
I could see that.
Like I think the themes and everything would go through it for me, or like, I'm just gonna like say this, like, you guys know that I'm like not particularly a fan of like quote unquote gratuitous nudity and things like that. Like that's just not my thing. I don't care who, like, people can watch whatever they want, right? And so I feel like sometimes when and I know this about myself, sometimes when I'm watching things like that, if I'm like in a mood where I don't know, I just feel like maybe for me it was like what's the word? Distracting from the plot and like the things behind the scenes that were actually happening.
I know when I pick movies, especially if I know there's something like when we did like Untold Story, and I was like, hey, just so you know, like here's the timestamp for like this sexual assault scene if you want to skip it, and I'll tend to be like, hey, there's like a bunch of nudity in this, but I legitimately forgot how much she's naked in this, and especially when that scene when they're in the shower and her fucking hair gets stuck in the one lady's like nipple ring. And I was like,
not my favorite.
Like I was like, oh yeah, there's like a lot more nudity in this than I fucking remember. For some reason in my mind, it was like just that shower scene.
Yeah,
but like,
which is like it's either neither here nor there. I'm just saying, like, for me, I feel like it was distracting from what was actually going on. So I feel like if I was able to read it and like focus on the behind the scenes stuff, like it would have worked better for me as like a single viewing. And like obviously I'm enjoying talking about it because it's like making me realize that I actually had thoughts about it versus just being like, I don't know what happened, nipple ring stuff, you know?
I feel like this would be like an
But
interesting novel where you could like
as a novel,
dig
it sounds
in,
extremely up my
like just
alley.
digging into sort of like the thoughts of these characters
Yeah.
at some point. I feel like would be kind of interesting because like, so when I was getting ready to pick this, I was like, because I don't own it. And I was like, oh, I wonder if like the Blu-ray's got like a commentary or something on it. And I was like, if it does, I'm gonna fucking buy it immediately. But like they're pretty bare bones and did not have a commentary because I would be really interested to like listen to, even if it's like not the director, just somebody that's like just on this movie's like wavelength, just like breaking it down a little bit in a commentary aspect. But that unfortunately was not the case. I don't remember where we left off. Was it the fire? Oh, the mosh pit.
The mosh pit, yeah. The sexy dancing. The dad obviously is like, okay, you're not even like trying anymore, which is whatever. Then we get.
Can you imagine like trying to dance that wrapped up in ace bandages and that pregnant and like like on the
No. No, definitely not.
Is this when she fucks the fire truck, or is that like?
Yes, yep, that's what I'm getting to. So she does that, and again, you know, very like obviously, even though there's like a lot of shit going on in this movie, that's like the scandalizing part of it, right? Which, okay, get over it. And again, I just like can't get around like coming back to like social commentary on like women's bodies and whatnot, because I think that's like also very like a prevalent thing to be like, that's what you're harping on about this movie.
Well,
I don't know.
it's so I was reading something about how like when this premiered at Cannes, that like it was literally like the way it was described, like there were two ways. One of them was like a meditation on like family and blah 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 and familial ties, and then the other one like was just some like, you know, was literally just like a young woman or like a son comes back to like the dad after going missing for however long, some shit like that, where like they didn't tell anybody what this movie was actually about, or like any of that sort of like body horror, like somebody fucks a car, gets pregnant shit. It was just like they played it off as it was going to be like this like family drama. So like I can't imagine going to like the first screening of this and being like, what the fuck is happening?
That would have been great. That would have been great to rubberneck at.
It's one of those things where like I always say, like I can't imagine what it was like to see like going to see like Alien the day it premiered or some shit. Like there's certain movies where like just like I would love to have been like in that first ever screening and just like with zero context. And I feel like this is one of those movies where like sure, like listening to your podcast is like what made me decide to watch it, but like again, like seeing it with like no context has got to be like a real mind fuck. And that first 30 minutes or whatever, when all of a sudden it's like, oh, this is like a completely different movie now.
To be fair too, like if you look on Letterboxd, it says following a series of unexplained crimes, a former firefighter is reunited with his son who has been missing for 10 years. Like,
nailed it.
Okay,
that's exactly what the movie's about. Nothing else.
Yeah.
Like, okay, but also no.
It's also like I would not want to watch that movie probably. Like,
no.
I feel like if that is all I saw about what this movie was, I would just be like, I don't know, maybe I'll watch it at some point, but I'm not like at all in a rush. And it was literally hearing like, oh, there's like body horror shit, there's like commentary on sort of like I guess like trans stuff, or just even just like Katie said, like the aspects commenting on like the female body and just like pregnancy and shit like that. That's like the thing that I was like, all right, well, this sounds really interesting, I'll get into this. But like just seeing that description, I would have been like, no thank you. I feel like it would have just been like that description makes it sound like a fucking like Nicole Kidman as a mom sort of like big like studio drama movie situation. Yeah, some shit like that, as opposed to like at all what it is.
Yeah. I will say I just am looking at like the screenshot and it's when she like first walks into the car show. That jacket is so sick.
rocks.
I would
I've
love
been
her
trying to
jacket.
find that jacket. I've been trying to find it. I finally figured out who makes the jacket, but I can't find it, and that
Oh,
bums me
it's
out.
amazing. I would love
It's
it.
got like a bit
Um,
of kind of like the jacket from Drive sort of thing.
yeah, only way
Yeah,
cooler.
Aria, my co-host on Queer Oracle, when I mentioned trying to find the jacket, just said this is the femcell version of the Drive jacket.
Yeah,
Hell yeah.
like I'm here for it. It's gorgeous.
Do you want to just go ahead
okay,
and jump to like I guess like the last maybe 15 minutes
yeah.
or whatever?
So kind of yeah. So essentially, yeah, she like like is intimate with a fire truck or whatever, and
What a thing to just like, as an aside, just blow past.
Oh yeah, by the
She's
way,
intimate with a fire truck or whatever.
by the way,
she's now in a
yes.
committed relationship with this fire truck.
Yes, they are Facebook official, to throw that back. And then immediately, like, which is like really interesting because, again, if we're talking about like the dynamic of her, like she's been like tagging along as like a firefighter because that's the dad's what was his name? Vincent?
Yeah.
Vincent, yeah.
Vincent's profession, and he's been kind of like trying to teach her how to like do the job or whatever. And like I don't know, just like interesting that she decides that's what she's gonna do. So, but that kind of like sets off her quote unquote labor, if you can call it that, because she's at the fire station and immediately starts having like contractions. Her stomach skin is ripping open,
Yeah, it's like
and there's just like
splitting and there's like metal.
Rome underneath. Really interesting. And so she immediately goes to find Vincent for comfort, right? Because this is like he's the only person she has a relationship with now, and is like scared, obviously in a lot of pain, as she has been pretty much the entire movie. Crawls into bed with him, and at first it starts, and like this goes back to kind of like what you guys were saying about like relationship or whatever. It's like very obvious to me that like, and again, like we do see that this is very common with people who have like head traumas, is that they don't understand the difference between like having a relationship with somebody and intimacy. Because essentially what happens is that he starts like comforting her, like, you know, because she's obviously in pain, and then she immediately starts like trying to make out with him, because it's like, yeah, of course, she doesn't understand relationships and intimacy, right? So she thinks that like if somebody is showing me affection, this is what they want, like access to my body.
Is he? No, he's not still in bed from when he accidentally like lights himself on fire, right?
Yeah,
Oh, yeah.
Is he?
Yeah, he is.
I couldn't
Yes.
remember if this was like a different moment or not.
I skipped over that part because I'm not really sure what that, how to process whatever. Which actually is like interesting, because maybe like the theory about maybe the actual son dying in a fire is like maybe that kind of lends to that. Like he's like obviously.
Yeah.
I mean, he's a firefighter, but obviously he's like entranced with fire, right? So that's like another interesting angle. But yeah, so she's like immediately trying to like make out with him, and he's like obviously not interested, feels only paternal instinct towards her. And this is when she like actually goes into labor, and like obviously he's trying to like help her, and it's like very intimate because, you know, he probably. Well, I don't know. Do firefighters assist with births ever? Maybe they do.
I think they're like somewhat trained for that scenario, because it's just depending on like the whatever's going on, they may be the first ones to like get on the scene, so they have to have
show
like,
up. Yeah.
Some probably idea of what to do.
Like if someone has a medical emergency in a locked apartment, it's not the paramedics kicking down the door,
Yeah.
right? So the firefighters
Yeah.
they have first aid training and all that. But I have no idea to what extent.
I'll listen.
Yeah.
Lori played a cop in one of her shorts, so I'm gonna take her word on it.
All right.
Yeah, I got deep into the role and I just started punching myself in the face, going ACAB, ACAB, ACAB.
I was gonna say. Normally, I would say ACAB. Not about you though. You get a pass.
Lori
It's fine.
went through all of the police training for the role, real like Lance Henriksen. Like,
Don't worry, I played a cop, but I do get my throat cut.
yeah.
Okay, good. All right, great. I love it. So yeah, they're basically just like clinging to each other. He's like, look in my eyes, like trying to help her through this labor that is like very obviously again really strange because she's like chrome underneath her skin
like
now or
the
something.
entire time it's happening, it's like there's a shot that like pans from like face down her body, and like her stomach is like splitting as it's happening, and like it's all just like metal, as like sort of in like, because at some point I think maybe earlier, maybe it's in this scene, like you can see like the spot where she has the scar from her surgery with a plate in her head like is now split open, and you can see it, and so now like I don't know what it means, but like her like whole body seems to be metal plated under her skin at this point. And like I don't know, it's really interesting the way like I like the turn of the dad. She like gets up and is gonna like leave the room and like turns around as like she's like clearly having a bad go of it. Like going into labor and all that shit, and he like turns around and he like had like, you know, like has her on her back, and like he does that thing where he like grabs her arms and it's like, you know, push, I'm here for you, like we'll get through this, blah blah blah. And after she gives birth, she essentially like goes unconscious and dies. And so now he's like he tries to save her and does like the chest compressions and stuff like that, and gives up and like is like crying and just like grabs the baby and like is holding it and is like, I'm here, essentially saying the same shit he said to her. And but as a baby that is covered in motor oil and has like weird metal shit on its spine.
So we need a sequel about just this baby.
Yeah, man.
I'm all in on Titane baby versus Eraserhead. Let's go.
Yeah, so yeah, I don't know. That's essentially it.
I want a movie that is, I need to know how he's getting his bed clean. After all,
he's gonna burn it. He's just gonna burn it and start over.
The whole house down. Everything's covered in motor oil.
Yeah, I think you have to. Yeah,
it's so good. I feel like you maybe, after talking about it, probably at least appreciate it more than
I do. I think there's a lot of things in this that were just like, well, I think like triggering for me in a way that it was like hard physically for me to like watch and understand. That's why I was saying like I think that maybe the book version is for me, because like I enjoy what came out of our conversation, like talking about what this is actually about. But
we need to go back
it was hard to watch.
Just doing like book adaptations of movies all the time.
Yeah, I think I'll write it. I will watch this. I'll put it on my list.
Yeah.
I want the junior novelization of Titane. I want to read that.
I'll do
what's
it.
the children's book, like the golden
the little golden.
Just do
whatever.
like a kid's version of it.
I will. I am obsessed with like novelization movie things. So far though, I pretty much only have like superhero ones. I do have Jurassic Park. I got Vampires, John Carpenter's Vampires. I actually just got also the Blair Witch Project dossier, which I'm really excited to read. I think that I could just really make a career of this.
I don't think that's a career. Oh, you mean like writing them?
Yeah.
I thought you meant like buying and reading them.
I think I could make I just need you guys to donate to my Kickstarter. My lifelong dream of having a career of buying books. I mean, what do you think? Yeah.
Does anybody have anything else on Titane before?
The one thing that because you'd mentioned wondering about how trans people respond to the gender stuff going on is I think everyone I know who is trans or gender non-conforming or just queer in general really digs this movie, or at least for the most part they do. And I think a lot of it comes back to that final scene with the mosh pit and then the dance on top of the fire truck, where it's just the perfect split of performative masculinity and performative femininity with the very quote-unquote sexy dance while all the dudes were just moshing out now. And I always laugh at this moment when it just cuts to the firefighter dudes watching Alexia do that dance. They're just like, the fuck? But that scene, I think, is just kind of one of the key moments in really understanding sort of the gender performance of this movie.
Yeah. I think it's like really well done. But I'm like curious what like the, when it's coming from like somebody who wrote and directed it that's not part of like whatever community is being, talked about, I guess. I'm always curious what like that community has to say. And that was the thing, is like I immediately went to like Letterboxd after I watched it and was like digging through like reviews and stuff and seeing like a lot of trans people where they're like, no, this movie rocks. This is like really well done, blah, blah, blah. But I don't know if I saw necessarily like specifically people, at least the ones I saw, talking about like that fire truck scene specifically. So
maybe I'm alone on that, but that one really stuck out.
I can absolutely see that. This was like, like a month or whatever after it like hit streaming, so it wasn't probably as watched at the point.
Gotcha.
So yeah, I don't know. I think it's all pretty great. This an absolute banger.
That scene is great too because it kind of like encapsulates everything when they're like doing this like long pan over like all the firefighters looking, and the range of like confusion to like I don't know, I'm into this, because like you know what I mean, it was like really interesting to me. So yeah, I could see that. Yeah.
All right, let's talk about some shit we watched. I don't think we've recorded
in like a month.
6 months.
It's been 2 years.
It's been a while. Katie, what have you watched since we did the editor?
Let's see. I watched Ticks. That was a bonus episode. Rocks. I watched Poor Things.
Oh yeah, what'd you think about that?
Not for me.
I still need to watch that, but it seems interesting to me.
I feel like I have a lot of the same issues that I had with that movie I had with this movie, so maybe I just need to talk about it more, because I literally just watched it and haven't talked about it with anybody. And like I understand the message that they were trying to like relay with it, but it did not work for me. Like whatever.
I think
I don't know.
Thing I like made me really interested about it is I keep seeing people say it's essentially Frankenhooker, but like a like more acceptable quote unquote version of it.
Like kind of.
Like, I can kind of see why people say that. Yeah, I just for me it wasn't expressed and or handled in a way that I found. I don't know. It's hard to talk about it without having like a huge conversation around it, I think, because there's like a lot of similar issues and more. It did not work for me. I love Emma Stone. She's like one of my favorites. I think the visually, again, stunning. Her outfits, I'm in love. Like I'm actually in love with some of the stuff she wears in the movie. But overall, not for me. That's fine. And then I watched of course, I watched that Quiet on the Set, The Dark Side of Kids TV. You and I, Nathan, like kind of texted about it at length. So all I'm going to say really about that documentary is if you know the outcome of it, I do not feel like it's worth watching. There's like nothing additional. You don't gain anything from watching it if you already know the info, in my opinion.
It feels weirdly exploitative too, with how it's been handled and marketed and the way some of it was shot. Like it feels really gross.
I feel like just seeing like shit on Instagram about it was enough that like I probably got like all of the information as opposed to sitting through the entire thing. Seeing the footage, because so like that, all of the stuff that I've seen from that documentary was all like post when I was watching Nickelodeon, or like, you know, I wasn't like a Disney Channel kid. That was all sort of like, this was all like post where I would have been like, you know, 16, 17 or some shit. So I have like no, outside of just like the Amanda Bynes kind of like all that stuff that's in it, I had no like attachment, or like I did not see any of these shows that are like talked about. Like I didn't see Drake and Josh or like any of that shit, or whatever show Ariana Grande was on. But like seeing some of the stuff on like Instagram that people have posted from those shows, I'm like, how the fuck did any of this get made?
Yeah.
Yes. I also feel like, not only do I feel like it was exploitive, I also feel like it was kind of gutless, because the show, like the documentary was like poised as like a expose on like these executives like abusing, like being a childhood actor is already very, very hard, and then you have this angle of like predators, right? And I feel like the people who made the documentary, I have no idea who's involved or what else that they've made to like know ahead of time if I felt like their credibility was good or whatever. But it's like they kind of just like show you the info. It's like it's about 3 different people, right? The first 2 were people who I don't remember the first guy's name, but the second guy is Brian Peck, and both of them had already been tried and convicted to different extents, right? Because like obviously we know Brian Peck continued to work with children after he was convicted, which is disgusting. But then the other guy, Dan Schneider or whatever, is that his name? Who cares? Yeah. He sucks. And I'm sure maybe I am being harsh about this, because I'm sure there's legal stuff going on behind the scenes that I don't know about, but they essentially were just like, here's this thing this person said, and then it would be like, he says this didn't happen. Like, they're not pointing they're not like, I don't know, they just didn't, this is not the correct word, but they didn't seem vindictive enough to me in this documentary. It was kind of like, to me, they were just exploiting getting people to talk about what happened, to be like, oh yeah, here's this expose documentary on it, when that's not what it was. It was like I don't know if I'm explaining
I understand what you're saying.
myself correctly, but so yeah, if you know the info, I feel like you don't need to watch it and give them like more likes or whatever. Most of the episodes were about Drake Bell, who obviously has his own issues. I feel like he was I don't know, I have mixed feelings about that too, but yeah, I mean, it is what it is. Okay, then I've been watching, we talked about this on a bonus episode. We did Justice League Flashpoint Paradox for a bonus episode, and then I've also been watching X-Men Evolutions, which I think I might have been calling X-Men Generations.
No, you were saying Evolution.
Okay. That's a Degrassi. Generations. So I've been watching that. I'm about to finish that, so then I can watch the new X-Men when it comes out. And then I watched something for our... Wait,
last week's episode, technically.
Yes. I also watched Predator. Which is kind of fitting. So I think that's it.
All right, Kit, what'd you watch?
I also watched Poor Things, which I thought was pretty good, but a little draggy. Recommend. Then I watched the Roadhouse remake.
That's fine. Oh, we're gonna watch that. I bet it's terrible.
Do not recommend.
Ooh.
It's I like Jake Gyllenhaal in it. He's like having fun, and they basically just made Dalton a fucking psychopath.
Yeah, I saw one clip from it, and I was like, oh, interesting. He seems like kind of crazy.
By the end, he's just like, "Hey, you've made me snap, and now I'm gonna murder all of you." And it's like, "Oh, okay, he's
Yeah, why not?
just a vindictive lunatic. That's cool." Conor McGregor's fucking awful because, of course, he is. Uh, the guy playing the main bad guy seems like he's having a lot of fun though, but I don't know. It's the whole time I was like, I could just be watching Roadhouse instead, and that's like the last thing you want people to think while watching your remake. So
Yeah.
don't recommend. Not very good. And then I watched Immaculate, and I thought it was pretty good.
I've seen a lot of people that made me like, because I kind of had zero interest because it just felt like it was going to be like a Blumhousey type movie from what I saw. But then I saw a lot of people saying it's very like Giallo inspired, but like I feel like almost everybody's been like, it's really good until like the last like 15 minutes. It kind of falls apart.
It So the last 15 minutes, there were certain things that I was hoping would happen because it had escalated to like kind of something ridiculous, and I was hoping they would take it a lot further, and they didn't, and it kind of sags a little bit. But then at the very last bit, they kind of commit to something insane, so I respect it. I thought it was pretty good. It seems really exhausting being Catholic.
Yeah. I should say.
I'll probably watch that like whenever it's free somewhere.
Yeah, it's got giallo moments. Like there are definitely 5-minute stretches where you're like, oh, this could definitely be like a 70s Italian movie, but it's definitely not throughout the course of the whole film.
I think the thing that really sold me is that like Erica from Unsung Horrors, who hates everything made post 1989, gave it 3.5 stars. So I was like, okay, so if Erica has like found this at all like watchable, I'll see what it's about. Also, like the right wing's reaction to
whoever's doing the like advertising and handling all the marketing for it, they're fucking crushing it, putting insane right-winger quotes on the poster and just being like, go see Immaculate.
The fact that they don't understand how a movie is made, where they were just like, oh, they saw that we all said that like she's killing woke people by having, I don't know, cleavage on Saturday Night Live 2 weeks ago, so they had to cram her into this movie. It's like, all right, maybe learn how long it takes to make a fucking movie.
Right.
Was that it, Kit?
Yep.
All right. Lori, what have you watched since we did Final Flesh? Tell us every movie.
Yeah.
I can really do that.
Detailed accounting.
Actually, I'll tell you everything I've watched this calendar year. Long Weekend, Cemetery Man, The Doom Generation, Climax, Green Room, Raw, and Titane, and that's fucking it. I recommend all of them. They were all bangers. But
did you watch the Cemetery Man like Severin release?
Yes, sure did.
I still haven't had a chance to dig into that, but I can't wait.
I've loved that movie since I was a teenager, and but it's always been in kind of dodgy copies. So seeing it cleaned up and looking as gorgeous as that transfer does, it's so worth it.
I feel like it's one of like 2 of the quote unquote Demons franchise movies that Katie actually enjoyed. So
yeah.
Let's see.
That's one that if anybody that is one that I like legit, not making a joke, want to read the book of. So if anybody somehow
books?
finds
based on a book.
Yeah.
I don't know how easy it is to get or if it's been translated from Italian, but
if I cannot learn Italian, so I need someone to do it for me.
It's just someone.
All right, I'm on it.
Okay, thank you.
I watched Error 4444's Run and Kill Blu-ray movies. Still perfect. Blu-ray is very good. It looks fucking incredible based on like only seeing the shitty YouTube copy that I have put up on YouTube. I watched Visual Vengeance Blu-ray for Scream Queen and The Wrong Door. Scream Queen was fine. I feel like the thing holding it up is the Linnea Quigley music video for. She does a version of These Boots Were Made for Walking about a chainsaw. That's very weird.
That sounds incredible.
The Wrong Door was really interesting because it's like an SOV movie or whatever, but it's like not specifically a horror movie. It's more like a cat and mouse chase movie. That was a very interesting movie to be made as like an SOV, and I kind of recommend it. It's weird and kind of fun. I watched Sex World, which was fine. I watched, I think, Cauldron, maybe Neon Eagle. I forget who put this out, but Zero Woman, Red Handcuffs, which was a banger. Kind of felt like the female prisoner Scorpion movies if they were like way more harsh.
Oh, I love those fucking Prisoner Scorpion movies.
It's kind of like if those movies were like a rape revenge movie. You probably really like it. It's pretty great. Like the main actress in it has the same sort of like Mieko Kaji stare going on, and like
Nice.
not a whole lot of dialogue from them. So it's kind of the same sort of thing, but it's pretty good. I got Criterion Collection of Lost Highway. Still don't know what that movie's about, but it rocks.
Doesn't matter.
That movie is again another like I vibe with it, and it's pretty perfect. I still don't know what the fuck's going on in it.
All you need to know is that Rammstein needle drop.
The score to that, or the soundtrack and score to that movie are pretty great. And then I watched The Collingswood Story, which is a 2002 found footage screen horror movie made in New Jersey, which was mostly the only reason I bought it. And it's not great. Like, I'm not a found footage person at all, but it's
But you are a New Jersey person.
Collingswood has one of the grossest flea markets I've ever been to, but kind of rocks. And I don't know, it was fine. It's more than anything, it was really interesting seeing this like late 90s, early 2000s shitty screen horror stuff where like everything on screen looks like Winamp fucking shit, and it kind of rocked. And then the last thing I watched,
That sounds exactly for me.
you might like it. It's very slow at the beginning, but like once it gets into the actual sort of like found footage haunting shit, like it kind of works, but it takes a long time to get to that. But the last thing I watched was The Menu, which I fucking loved.
Movie slaps.
Yeah.
I have not seen that.
I wasn't sure how I was gonna feel, but I like Anna Taylor-Joy, so I was like, I don't know, I'm looking for something to watch. I'll watch this, and it like really worked for me.
Yeah. Oh, yay. Finally a movie all of us agree on. All three of us agree on.
Yeah, it's one of the newer like movies that I kind of really vibed with. So, yeah.
Yeah, great.
All right. Shout outs, Katie.
I'm gonna shout out wow, so many things are happening in my life.
Cats. It's the cats together.
Jokermobile.
Cats. No, I'm gonna say the new update for Stardew Valley, because they've just added so much stuff that it's essentially such like a refreshing new game now. So, and I'm literally obsessed with it.
All right, Kit, what do you want to shout out?
There was recently a heavy metal album release themed around Dale Earnhardt called I Am the Intimidator, and it fucking slaps. The cover is Dale Earnhardt holding a sword.
What form of metal are we talking here? Is this like a...
Oh, like trad.
Okay,
like
that's what I
heavy
figured.
metal.
Like, I was gonna say like Eternal Champion type shit.
Oh yeah. I'll say, is it the song "Eat My Smoke"? That's the jam.
Lori, you have anything you want to shout out?
I hadn't thought ahead, but I'll jump off what Kit just said, and I'm going to shout out the concept of cum metal because I've been listening to a lot of Health recently.
Hell yeah.
I actually just listened to Scott Ackerman and like Comedy Bang Bang has like a Patreon, and one of the things he does on that is something called CBB FM, where he just has like someone come on and they'll just like play songs at random for like 2 to 3 hours and talk about them. And one of them was one of the dudes from Health, which was
nice.
funny because like Scott Ackerman is very much not a heavy metal or sort of like that kind of music dude. And it was just very funny, like, 'cause he was name dropping all of this shit from like, you know, notorious punk venues in like San Diego to like The Locust or Melt Banana or all these like weird sort of like shit where like no one else on the podcast had any idea what he was talking about. And I was like, I know these things.
I
I
love Health.
I have not dived into them for some reason, although I know I will probably be very into them. They're like,
Their newest one rocks.
Yeah.
Rat Wars
I-
forever.
That was
yeah, I'm like right in the middle of like a Nine Inch Nails binge, so it feels like once I get through like their discography, I might actually switch over to Health, because I feel like I will probably be very into them.
I
Yeah.
know they're listening right now.
Yeah.
They're regular
Definitely.
listeners.
We love you.
So I'm going to pitch to them that they need to force Bethesda to make a new Quake game and have Health score it, because it
That
would be
sounds
perfect.
sick. Yeah.
My shout out's Nine Inch Nails. Pretty good band. I don't know
Perfect.
if anyone's heard of them.
Yeah.
I've heard
Jay
maybe
Leno
one or,
voice.
Yeah.
one or
You heard
two.
about
you,
this?
you guys heard about this? Hesitation Marks, specifically. A fucking banger that I feel like not enough people talk about.
I was unpacking my CDs finally after a year and a half the other day, and I forgot I had Hesitation Marks and was like, oh man, that album slaps.
It's so good. Like, I feel like most people don't seem to talk about, like I don't know, the last 10 years of Nine Inch Nails. As, you know, 'cause everyone's just pretty much just only here for those, like, first 3 albums, it seems. But, like, their
Yeah.
whole discography is fucking good. Alright, Katie, what are we doing next week?
Okay. We are going to do 2008's
Oh, God.
Let the Right One In.
Oh, okay. I'm in.
Sweet.
That was actually...
I heard
I know.
2000s like, oh no.
I put it for the jump scare, okay, but we're fine.
That works too, because that was also kind of on my like short list of one of the movies I wanted to pick, so makes it easier for me.
Yeah, so that is on Tubi right now, if you do not own it.
I do.
Me too.
Movie rocks.
Is the '08 one the original or the Matt Reeves
The original.
one? Okay, sweet.
The original.
I
So
I like both a lot.
The remake
I
is
was
fine,
curious.
but I also have zero interest in rewatching it.
I actually haven't seen the remake. So maybe if it's streaming, I will watch that also. But yeah, I had like such a hard time trying to pick what movie to do, but then because I was like, I don't really want to do like a 2-hour movie and like take notes on it or whatever. But I was like, we pretty much have been doing that anyways, and I've seen it so many times
I was
that
gonna say,
like
so you picked one that's like literally 6 minutes short
it's
of 2
still
hours
also 2
and
hours,
in fucking
right?
another language.
Yeah. So yeah, it is in Swedish, just to prime anybody who's also going to watch it. It is literally, it's like one of my top 10 favorite movies ever. But I was like, I've seen it enough at this point. I feel like I can, again, kind of like what we did, just take cursory notes or whatever. But
I think that scene in the pool, especially when like the kid's head is being held underwater, is maybe one of the greatest scenes in all of cinema.
I agree, but I'm really pissed off because now if you Google the movie, that's like this, like the still shot, and I'm like, why are you gonna ruin it?
That's all I'm gonna talk about in that episode. But like the fucking feet skittering across the water and body parts fall, it's so fucking good.
I assume, have you seen this, Kit?
Yeah.
Okay. All right. So yeah, I'm excited to talk
All right.
about it because
That'll be fun.
yeah.
Lori, what you want to tell people anything you got going on? Promote anything?
Yeah, I haven't done much in terms of queer horror cult lately, but we've kind of come up with an angle to sort of revive that. So we're gonna give it a go, bank a couple episodes, and then hopefully start releasing them again this summer.
Hell yeah.
Hell yeah.
Like I always say, it's still my favorite movie podcast, and I'm
That
excited
works.
for new stuff.
Wow.
Yeah, our podcast
What are
sucks,
we
so.
chopping?
I listen to our podcast too, but I hate myself, so
I don't.
We
I have to,
I
so.
do listen. We're kind of like goofy, silly. We don't really know what's going on, and I feel like it's
definitely our
very
vibe.
different. Yes, it's very different from what I would assume. What I would say is more like a scholarly, thoughtful podcast. So you can say it's
Well,
your favorite.
I
It's
think the
fine.
thing that I appreciate about what you and Arya do is like you'll have an episode like sort of like we said, like the Titane one, where it's like very like breaking stuff down and sort of like a like from like a real like film point of view and stuff like that. And then you'll do an episode like you did where you just watched a bunch of sex films and lost your mind. So
Yeah, always trying to keep it fresh. I will tease that what we are planning on doing might be Black Emmanuel related.
oh, I'm in. I finished that box set and felt like my brain melted. So I think that was like a pretty much a straight sort of binge over a month of what I watched. Like once
Damn.
you get into like the Mondo films and that, I was like, what's happening to me? All right, you can support us by joining our Patreon at patreon.com/IPSufferPodcast. We had an episode on ticks sort of recently, and then Katie and I did an episode on Justice League: The Flashpoint Paradox. I don't know what we're doing next. Something dealing with a movie. You can leave us a rating and review on iTunes and Spotify, all that shit. You can follow us on Instagram at I Hope You Suffer Podcast. You can follow Kit at Hidden Kitstery and Kitchification of Blood. Go see those Warhammer figures. See pictures of Hooch sleeping during good movies. Like a real anti-film dog.
Bro, watching True Lies the other night, and Arnold punched that like Doberman that goes to attack him at the start, and the Doberman like yelps, and Hooch shot upright and looked at the TV screen, and he was so concerned.
You all right, bro?
You can follow Katie at WerewolfFace. Join Katie's Patreon at patreon.com/werewolfface. You can listen to my other podcast, AK Movie Club. Lori, thanks again for coming on. Always a pleasure.
Oh,
Yeah, thank you.
Managed to get all good movies as opposed to when Shane comes on and has to watch real dog shit. So, like Shane,
All the Bible
want to
stuff.
watch a real bad Christian horror movie?
I feel so blessed being able to watch things that I actually
I
like.
still next time it's just you and I will do a bunch of James, or not James. I don't know. I was gonna say James Franco, Jess Franco.
I'm gonna say
Oh,
James
God.
Vanderbeek.
I'll force you to actually watch some movies you probably won't like for once.
Yeah, I'm in. I don't know why, but I'm in.
Yeah, figure it's gotta force you to watch those movies you've bought for some reason.
Yes.
All right. Let the right one in next week. I hope you have a good relationship with your car, but why?
Oh.